Hello and welcome to Script and Pencils from the Comic Crush. I'm your host, Paul. I'm here today with Jessica Ginting, who is the writer of Rosana, which is a new digital comic that's available now. Jess is going to give you some more information about where you can find it. But Jess, first, let me ask you, what made you want to start doing comics? Because by sort of trade, you're not a comics writer, I take it. It's not something you kind of studied in. It's just something you've come to. Is that correct?
Yes, actually. So I've always been interested in comics. I think since I was in high school, got into it the same way a lot of people did, really, by superhero comics. Read a lot of Batman comics. That was really my introduction to it. Um, and I think in university was when I studied English literature in Bristol. And I did a lot of comics research for some of my papers. So I did my whole dissertation on Watchmen, which I was a huge fan of. And so I think that was kind of when I started learning a lot more about like the techniques involved in comic writing. And so I'm primarily a poet and just a short fiction writer in general. But when I did my dissertation on Watchmen and I learned a lot about, how comics are made, I just kind of wanted to start something of my own. And I had also been online getting to know a lot of artists on Twitter at the same time. So I'd been making a lot of friends on Twitter, as a lot of people do. So I just thought it would be, a really fun thing to do.
Okay. And given the kind of comics that you like, looking at Rosanna, it's not what you would term necessarily a traditional superhero comic. In fact, could you just tell us kind of let the audience know what the comic's about?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I think I should have mentioned this before as well, but so I did my master's degree in publishing, and I think I learned a lot about indie comics in that time as well, because it's very different when you start off with superhero comics as a reference, and you learn about indie comics and a lot of these other more experimental ways that you can produce a comic. And a lot of these are made by people, creators, artists who are just putting them out on their own, really, on their own website, whether it's on Tumblr, on their blogs, or even short comics on Twitter. So yeah, I did choose to go with a little bit more of like a non-traditional route. And as for the story of Rosana itself, so she's an Indonesian superhero inspired by my background. I grew up in Jakarta in Indonesia. And there are a lot of environmental themes in the comic as well, because you get to see the premise of the story is that it's in Indonesia set in an alternate future where I think more than half of the world's population have gone off to space. And as a result of that, people have been kind of left to their own devices in their communities for, a few decades, and people are living more insular lives. But something goes wrong in the space mission, and once it's reported that these people are coming back, the government kicks in again and starts to put out all the land for people who are coming back. And there's like this conflict between this organization who tries to claim ownership over certain lands, and the people trying to live their life freely as they have been for the past couple of decades. So that's essentially what it's about.
Okay, that's a really interesting pitch because we've seen a lot of kind of quite dystopian visions of the future where people have to kind of flee the earth. But this actually seems like quite a positive one, where there might be kind of more of a bit of a balance between nature and technology and human beings' own kind of spread around the planet. Is that something that you feel we should be, as a people, just as your own opinion, like, is that something you feel we should be aiming for, more of a balance?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. I think in addition to just my general interest in creating like semi-futuristic, not really dystopian story, I've always been interested in the environment, in like sustainability and climate. I currently work in a climate firm, and even before I started working, I did a lot of like volunteering in different places. I did a summer in Greece when I was doing a project for sea turtles. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, and I worked in several places in Indonesia, in Sumba included. So it's like the eastern part of Indonesia, which is a lot of where I got the influences for this comic as well. I've told this story to people before. So I worked as a teacher there, and there's this place called the Sumba Hospitality Foundation where it's actually a hospitality school to help train local kids work in the sector, which I think the tourism sector in Indonesia is really interesting because it's always in conflict with the local people. And you know how development is, it kind of gentrifies an area, and it kind of takes away ownership for a lot of people who live in these places. So when I was working in these places, in the school, I thought they did a great job of kind of balancing that and promoting this ownership among the community. And so I think that was really what inspired me to write Rosana as well, and to kind of explore a story and a world where this is the norm, instead of just having like massive corporations decide how to develop places. And so when I was conceptualizing Rosana, I was talking to some of the people I met there and just saying, like, how do you guys feel about the tourism sector here, and what do you envision for like a more sustainable future? And I thought it was a really great way how they incorporated just the technology they use for like the agriculture, or for the water systems as well. And I kind of wanted to explore that in a comic book setting.
Okay. And is this your first comic, or had you tried the medium before in terms of being a creator?
So this is my first comic, actually. I dove straight into it. And I think it's been a learning process definitely for me, but for my whole team as well. So my initial team, so we have 5 artists in total right now, but I first started with Baji, Osa, and Chong. So they were the 3 artists who came to me when I first put out a call. And I don't think they had done like a full-length comic either. They were both they're all amazing artists in their own right. But I think the whole project of doing like a big story was kind of new to all of us, really. So we were all kind of teaching each other and trying to figure it out as we go along, because I provide the script for them, and we have this Discord group where we all talk and just share our resources, and I think it makes it easier for the process. And yeah, I think it's really interesting watching their process as artists as well. And sometimes they would come back to me for questions, as in like asking me how I felt their thing should go. But I think for the most part, I usually just let them have free reign over the the creative panels. Whenever I write my script, I have my script, but I tell them, if you envision something working better a certain way, just feel free to go with it. You can obviously run it by me, but for the most part, I feel like the artist would always know best when it comes to these things. And so, yeah, I think we all just kind of dive straight into it.
And I'm curious, how do you divide up? So, I mean, the comic is done. Do you do it as a web comic, so it's a few panels a day or a week, or do you create an entire issue of several pages that goes out all at once? What's the sort of form that it takes?
So it's currently working as more of like a webcomic format, where we have a couple pages every few months or weeks. Really, I think our schedule is a little bit slower than you would expect of most webcomics. because I think it is a little intimidating when you see those like 500-page comics on like Webtoons or something going every day. And for a lot of us, I think for most of us, none of us are full-time artists. So we're all kind of doing this as our like on the side really of our normal jobs. So I think I knew from the beginning I didn't really want to put that pressure on them to produce a certain amount of things, pages, like, I don't know, in a few weeks or a few months or something. So I think we have been very flexible in terms of scheduling, which is great because it allows us to just work at our own pace. And yeah, we have a few pages every few months.
Okay. And how does that kind of affect your writing of the piece? Do you like, I mean, are they producing, so if you produce 5 pages worth of script, are they putting 5 pages worth of comic out, or is it that you might get a couple of pages and then a few weeks later or a few months later you might get 3 more, or do you kind of have strict kind of deadlines and sort of spacing of the work? Are you quite kind of tight with that, you guys?
Well, I think to begin with, they probably have a lot of leeway with the timings because I'm a slow writer as well. It takes all, like, I think most of the time it's me being like, I'm sorry guys, I still have to finish the script. Once I do finish it, I usually have like a goal of when I want the pages to come out. So for example, I can say we can aim to have it out within the next 4 or 5 months or something, and they usually get it in time for that. And depending on how many pages it is, I think it's usually around 7 to 12 pages in a chapter that we've been doing. So it's like quite manageable. It's not like a large amount, and I just try to schedule that with the amount of time that with the amount of pages that I've gotten. So I think spacing out the releases has been a challenge, especially for me as a creator and someone who's like planning the promotions. I think that's something that I need to learn to get better at. Because sometimes you do get like excited and announce things and it's like not ready, and I'm like, that's my fault for announcing things before it's ready.
I think you spend as much time promoting a thing. I mean, I know I have to for the website, and I need to get better at it as well. But you spend as much time promoting the thing you've made as you did making it. It's crazy the amount of kind of push you need to put behind something nowadays. But is this a project that you guys would be happy to kind of carry on doing indefinitely, or do you have an ending in mind?
So yeah, I think a project for me is something that is going to carry on indefinitely, at least the way I see it right now. I can explain a little bit about what I envision it to be, because I did explain to you we have 5 artists right now.
Yeah.
And so apart from my first 3 that I worked with, Baji, Osa, and Chong, currently I'm working with Trench and Nugra on this current chapter, Act 3. So we have like a rolling team of artists, and I think that's something that I established early on with my initial team, just because I wasn't sure how long they would be available to work on it for. It's when I initially put out the call, I wasn't really planning ahead in the way I should have been, but obviously I didn't want to book their time for forever. And I think one of them also said, I think it was Osa who said, I think it would be cool if Rosana didn't have like an in-house style, and it would just kind of switch between artists and kind of keep going indefinitely in the way a lot of comic book stories do and a lot of superheroes do, really.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about that a lot more, and I thought it would be a good chance for me to be able to collaborate with as many artists as possible forever, really. And just to like split up the stories between everyone, because I think the way I created Rosana, I kind of wanted to create like that mythical figure of like an Indonesian hero, because we don't really have a lot of popular contemporary Indonesian heroes. I think it's actually come back a lot more recently since I started Rosana. So like in 2017, because we have like our own version of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe that just kicked into gear, I think 2 years ago or last year.
Okay, that's fascinating. I literally had obviously no idea
Yeah.
that was happening there. That's great.
No, definitely. Because at the time when I conceptualized Rosana, there was like nothing, at least on the big screen, and I was really influenced by what the MCU was coming up with at the time. So, Black Panther was also, I saw that on screen, and I was like, oh, I didn't know you could do this. Like, how the way they blended their like traditional African influences with sci-fi, and I was like, I could do that with Indonesia as well. And I think the environmental aspect of it probably had a lot to do with, how Thanos had his big plan in Infinity War, like snapping away the population. And a lot of people are like, what are the implications of that? And I was like, maybe I can explore the implications of having like half the population gone or something.
True, because you don't, funny enough, we were just talking about this, I think on the first Falcon and Winter Soldier pod we did yesterday. You don't necessarily see in the MCU what the true implications over that 5 years are. And I do have, and like Liz and I have talked about this quite a lot, I kind of have a fascination with what happens after the end of the world.
Yeah.
Like I don't, what is beyond this? What would life like be for survivors? So that's kind of a fascinating take on it, and I think that makes it immediately kind of takes things up a notch in terms of what you can explore and how you can explore it.
No, definitely. I definitely agree with you on the fascination with what happens at the end of the world. What happens after the big explosion, and how people are dealing with this. And going back to just the environmental implications as well, does that actually mean like more resources for everyone, or does the world kind of have a way of pouring resources anyway to the people in power, which is a bit of what you see in, Rosana. And we haven't really explored that a little bit more because she starts at her island, which has been quite insular. It's called Pulau Undana. That's her island. And in real life, that's an island that exists but is currently uninhabited. And it used to be used as like a military base by the government. But right now, I think it's been inactive for years now. But the story that I want to take with Rosana is have her leave the island and go throughout Indonesia and kind of learn about what's happened in the different parts of Indonesia while she's been living a very comfortable life, insulated from probably the rest of the politics that's been going on. Because we see at the same time, this large organization has been taking away land from other people and grabbing their resources as well. And we're getting to the part of the story now where Rosana's kind of learning more about the existence of them. So I think it's a really interesting arc to explore. And it's going to be a really fun journey, basically around Indonesia, and we'll get to look at sci-fi takes of these different regions, really.
And it's fascinating because it does sound truly sci-fi in the sense that, I mean, I always feel that sci-fi should be about how we live in the future, and that stuff really is like true science fiction, as opposed to a lot of the other stuff we see, which is kind of sci-fi fantasy, I guess. But that just sounds absolutely amazing, and just the fact that it's set in Indonesia again makes it more interesting from the sound of it, because it's not the US, it's not the UK, it's not somewhere where we've seen thousands of times sort of played out in comics and film. How has the sort of response from the Indonesian community been? Like, do you speak to people? I'm assuming you speak to people back home all the time, and what's the sort of response there been like?
Definitely. I think people are really interested in it, and they're always asking me for more, and I'm just like, I'm working on it. But that's always a good sign when people want more.
Yeah.
I think I'm in touch with a lot of the Indonesian art community and comics community on Twitter, especially since I've been living here the past few years. I think I would like to be back home a lot more. Obviously, the pandemic has kind of stopped that. I think especially when I was in university, I would spend a lot more time between the school breaks and all that. I would just go home for months at a time, really, and do a bit of traveling and meet people and learn
Mm.
about these different regions, because Indonesia is like a huge place. And especially me growing up in Jakarta, maybe a lot of people might not know this, but it's very different to other parts of Indonesia. I guess it's like if you live in London, you wouldn't really, it doesn't mean you know about the UK. And I know how.
I can testify to that. There's parts of London I know nothing about. So
Yeah, I know people like might be a little bit I don't know, I feel like there are a lot of misconceptions, and I feel like people in the UK as well, they sometimes see people from London as like knowing nothing about what goes on in these other regional areas.
yeah,
I think me growing up in Jakarta as well is kind of that same thing, which is why I think going to these places and actually meeting people and learning about it is such an important part, not just for the comic, but just for me in general. And I wish I could do more of it.
it sounds fantastic. What's next for Rosana? I mean, have you got some chapters kind of coming soon that we can talk about? Perhaps people can check out.
Yeah, definitely. So we've just wrapped up on our third chapter, which is where we get a look at the International Space Organization. So it was a complete shift change from like the island life. And I think that's where my current artists, Trench and Nugra, did such a great job of bringing this organization to life, because I think design-wise, this was one of the things that I wanted to tackle. And I didn't really know how it would look, really. This huge building, you get to see like the interior architecture of it, the people involved, their uniforms, and you can see them, what they're planning to do, which is at the moment they're coming to Rosana's island to confront her. Not her specifically, but there's this subplot with a pilot who has gone rogue from the organization and has landed in Rosana's island. And there's a connection between this new character, Rama, and Rosana that we're going to find out a little bit more about soon, because we see in the current chapter that he's been kind of doing a bit of research into this island, this Rosana, and he's been like intercepting transcripts from their other planes doing what did it do? Recon. That's the word for it. Yeah, these planes have been doing recon on the island, and he's been kind of listening into them, and he's been tracking down Rosana for reasons that we don't know yet. So I think the organization is kind of worried about what he's planning to do once he does get there. And so in the next chapter, we'll get to see that confrontation play out a bit more in real time. And there are a lot of great action scenes planned. So I know my artists are always excited when I give them action scenes. They're just like, yay. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, it sounds amazing. Oh, and then that's out now or sort of next week or quite soon? Sorry, what's the date for it?
Yeah, it's coming out next week. So we'll be dropping
Excellent.
the new chapter starting next week.
Fantastic. So we're going to have a link to Rosana the comic in the description down below once this goes out. We'll also put a link to Jess's YouTube channel, because you do reviews, sort of pop culture reviews, comics, film, TV, that sort of stuff. How long have you been doing that for?
Oh, I've been doing that since 2016, so a while.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's always strange looking back at it and seeing how long you've been doing something, because at least for me, when I first start out doing something, it's usually because I'm not like thinking ahead in any sense. I'm just like, I think this would be fun to do, and I do it, and I keep doing it again and again, and suddenly you have like 500 videos up on your channel. No, I don't have 500 videos. I think I have like 100 there. But no, it's been really fun. I started out doing just straight up movie reviews, where I would watch a film, talk about it in the same way a lot of my favorite movie reviewers did. I've been watching Jeremy Jahns since I was like in middle school, really, or Stuckman as well. So a lot of these like really popular film reviewers, I just kind of saw what they were doing, and I was like, I would like to do that too.
Yeah.
But recently I've branched out into talking a lot more about comics and talking a lot more about like the publishing side of things as well. I've done a few videos on not just reviews of comics, but also on the literary stuff that I'm also interested in, like poetry. I did a video on how people can submit their work to poetry magazines and everything, and people seem to be really interested in that. I haven't done another one since, but I probably should. And I think I've been going back to the film reviews as well, because for a while, I think last year, I got a bit stuck in a rut and I didn't really know how to talk about films in a way that was like exciting to me anymore. But I think I've kind of found my passion for it again recently. So it's been a lot of fun going back into it.
It's been a tough year in terms of finding passions, I think, or it's not so much that the desire to do stuff isn't there, but maybe the wheel has kind of been eroded slightly by everything that's happening. I found it really difficult this year. I think the longest period I took was like sort of 6 weeks when I did nothing, just because it was just like, oh, this is so depressing. But it has been hard for a lot of people. So well done, for getting stuff out there and making it. I certainly enjoy the reviews of yours that I've seen, and they're always on fascinating subjects. I think I was watching one on Zatanna the other day. That was really good that I came across, because that's a character that doesn't really get talked about a lot on YouTube, I think. But yeah, fascinating stuff. So guys, we're going to put links to everything that Jess is putting out, as much as she'll let us anyway. We'll just stick that all below in the description. You'll be able to follow Jess on Twitter and Insta and things if you want to keep up with her stuff, and you should. It's really good. We're really looking forward to next week when we can see the new chapter of Rosana. Jess, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to come on and tell us about your comic. It sounds great. And I think it's certainly going to hopefully find some more people after this. It sounds wonderful. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Paul.
No. I'm grateful that you came on.
Thank you so much.
So guys, thanks very much for watching. We'll catch you next time on The Crush. All the details will be below where you can find us. Remember to check out the Patreon and, of course, the rest of the videos on YouTube. Thanks. We'll catch you next time. Bye.